Okay guys, so today we're doing a video request. I had spoken in one of my videos on cleaning the air conditioner before the season about how I had installed a thermostat in the trailer. This is a video request. I got some people asking me how I did it, and they wanted to know more about the electrical on the air conditioning side of it, so that's what we're going to do today. I'm not going to take too long in this intro because we've got a lot of information to get in on this one. So we're going to go gather our stuff and we'll come right back. Okay guys, so the story behind the thermostat is we were getting ready to take a trip down to Florida for Easter weekend. And we hadn't had the camper out that year, and I wanted to take it out and make sure that everything was going to work before we went all the way down to Florida to find out that something didn't work. So, we get out to our campsite, we turn everything on, we go outside and we're cooking and having fun by the campfire, and we go back inside at the end of the night to go to sleep, and I go, oh, I never turned the air back up. It should be freezing cold in here, and it's not. Which is, at that point I realized, well, the air conditioner's not working. And I walked outside, and I couldn't hear the compressor run, and I looked at my progressive EMS. It wasn't really showing any power being used, so I knew for sure that the compressor wasn't on. So, couldn't get on the roof at the time to look at it, so I had to wait till we got home, and I found that this temperature selector switch here had gone out, and it wasn't doing anything. So I wanted to get rid of this and put it onto a regular thermostat anyway, so it sort of became an excuse to do that. I will go ahead and admit that this is not the easiest way to do this. The reason that I did it this way is after our trip, I had about a week to figure out and fix any issues that we found with the trailer. So I was on a tight time frame, and I had everything at the house to do it this way. So that's why it is the way that it is. But they do make kits to where this you'll swap out and there'll be no controls on it anymore. And it'll come with a thermostat, and it's got a little box and a panel and everything that you'll put in here that will control the thermostat. That, again, not the route that I went, and probably a lot easier than the way that I went too. When I put the thermostat in, I originally wanted it to go to this thermostat here. This is the one for the furnace, and I was going to swap this out and just have one control to control everything. I wasn't able to do that because there's some cross beams that go across, and I wasn't able to get anything to go through them, and I couldn't find a way without taking the whole ceiling apart to do it, and I just didn't want to do that. The juice really wasn't worth the squeeze to have one control. So what I ended up doing is I brought the thermostat down from the roof through the return side of the air conditioner, and it actually goes through the ceiling behind my microwave here, through some false panels back here to right over here. This is a Train 802 thermostat. I've had it lying around forever. I think I got it for somebody that wanted me to swap their thermostat at their house, and they never had me come out there and do it. So I said, well, it's mine now. I'm putting it in my trailer. It's a touchscreen thermostat. It is programmable. I don't have any programming set up in it because we don't spend any time in here really. I will say a couple of the positives are we don't have to listen to the fan the whole time the air conditioner's on anymore. And I can actually set a temperature. I can set it to 70 degrees instead of messing with a knob and trying to figure out where I feel comfortable. I did have to put in some relays up on the roof, which we'll get to that when we get to the electrical on it. But for now, that's about all there is on the thermostat. I definitely like this a lot better than the knobs, having to listen to the fan all the time, all that stuff. If any of you guys have watched my video on making the air conditioner quieter, you know I don't stand for that crap. I don't want to listen to it all the time. So this is definitely an improvement, and honestly, the trailer stays a lot more consistent and a lot more comfortable. So nothing but positive things to say about this project. It was a headache at the time trying to run the wire and trying to find a way to get it, but it was definitely worth it. But we're going to go up on the roof. I'm going to take the air conditioner apart, and we'll get started with doing the electrical checks on the air conditioning. Guys, as always, stay safe. Unplug the air conditioner. Unplug the whole trailer. I mean, there's really no reason for you to have the power plugged in when you're messing on the electrical. So unplug the trailer. I'm going to go outside. We're going to unplug it, take the cover off, and we'll get started on some electrical checks. Okay, guys. So we came up on the roof. I've got the cover off. I open up the electrical panel here. I had to cut my wires, my zip ties off my wires so I could get them out of the way enough. I had to install 2 relays. This one here is working the compressor. I don't know if you can see underneath. I've got labels for everything. I've got my transformer up here I had to install to run my thermostat. And then you can't really see it, but where these wires here are coming out of, I've got a relay right there that controls the fan. Again, it's a little complicated way of doing it. If somebody really truly wants to do it this way, you can contact me directly and I can give you a list of everything that I did and directions on how to do it. But it's a lot simpler to just go out and get the kit than try to source all these parts. But we do have a couple of things to check in here. We've got 2 capacitors. I know it's hard to see because it's a little cramped with everything I've got going on in here. There's 2 capacitors in here to check, and basically what they're doing is power correction. They're really just there to keep the power factor as close to 1 as possible, and that just helps the motors. I'm not really going to get into all the science of it because it'll be a 2-hour long video, but we want to check each of these capacitors. There's one here. This one's for the compressor. That's a 60, and we want to check this one down here, which is for the fan, and that's a 7.5. So grab our meter and we'll set it to capacitance. And again, guys, the trailer is unplugged. Actually, here, I'll set it to voltage real quick. And I know it's going to be a dead circuit because it's unplugged, but always do a ZEV, zero energy verification, to make sure. So I've got, I'll turn it where you guys can see it. So I've got 0 there. I know the circuit's dead. We'll kick it over to capacitance and check the capacitors. By doing that, you just pull the wires off. Make sure you remember where they go back on, write it down, or whatever you got to do to remember. And there we go. Get out of the way. Pull all the wires off, move them out of the way where they're not touching. Oh, that's okay, I can hold that one out of the way. And we put one lead on one side, one lead on the other. And the meter will read 60.5 microfarads, and we know that it's good. You can see that, right? Okay. So, we're done with that one. Plug the wires back in real fast so we don't forget where they go. Because if any of you guys watch any of my other videos, you'll know I'll forget it by the time I turn around. And with these, connectors here, these female spades that have the insulation on them, make sure that you actually get it on the spade and not just under the insulation. You want to have a good solid contact. Get this one here. Jesus. Come on. And yellow. And the red. Okay, so we got that one checked. Check the one for the fan down here. Oh. That one had a good connection. Pull that wire off. And just the same thing, one lead on one side, one lead on the other. And the meter reads 7.3. So we know that one's okay. As long as you're, the capacitors will tell you on them what their tolerance is. Like this one's 5%. I can't read what the tolerance on that one is. Generally, as a rule of thumb, as long as you're within plus or minus 10%, the capacitor is good. So that's 0.75 at a 7.5. Which would be 6.75. So I'm sorry, 6.25. So we're good there. We'll plug the terminals back in. Turn the meter off for now. We won't need it. And just while you're up here, anytime you have these crimp connections, make sure all those are tight. Just give them like a little tug. Make sure you don't pull a wire out or something like that. Make sure if you have any wire nuts, give them all a twist. Make sure they're all tight. Make sure all your spade connectors are all tight. Generally, anytime I'm inside the electrical section of any piece of equipment, I'm going to put my hands on every wire that I can to make sure that it's not loose. Loose connections generate heat. Heat generates issues. And also, loose connections will give you a lot of intermittent problems because it'll make a connection and then it'll stop making a connection and stuff like that. So it really just eliminates a lot of problems head on. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to plug the trailer back in and turn the air conditioner on, and we'll make a couple of checks on the amp draws of the compressor and the fan motor to make sure that the motors themselves are doing okay. So we'll do that and come right back. Okay guys, so we've got it running, and there's a couple of checks that we want to make on the electrical side. Again, you'll need a meter for this, and again, you know, if you're not comfortable doing something like this, if you're afraid of electricity or something, just don't even mess with it, because it's not worth risking getting yourself hurt. I mean, just take it to somebody and have it professionally checked over. But if none of those things apply to you, then grab an electrical meter and we'll move on. So the first thing we want to check is we want to make sure that we have the right voltage going to it. So if we look over here on our nameplate, we can see that it's a 115 volt system. So we'll take one wire here, and this is actually power coming up here now after I did my thermostat swap. Check there to a ground reference, and we have 118 volts. So that's within our 10% mark, so we're good there. The next thing we're going to check is our amp draws on our compressor and our fan motor. So we'll swap this over to amps, and we'll check our run winding. So we're reading 7.7 amps. The rated load amps is 9.7. You want to generally be between about 60 and 80% of your rated load amps. So we're right in that right in that range there. We're at about 75 or so. The next thing we're going to check is the fan motor, and on this it's also it doubles as the condenser fan and the blower motor. So if we go back over to here, our fan motor is 3.4, and I know that, where's my fan motor wire? Oh, here it is. Yeah, so that's my fan motor now. We're at 2.4. Again, these are going to run about 80% of what they're rated at, so we're right in that ballpark there. And the electrical on this looks good. And just for all you heathens out there, because I know somebody's going to say something, I did clean up the wiring when I was done. I went down, turned it back off, cleaned up all the wiring, put zip ties on everything. I even cut the little ends off because I'm not an animal. But really, that's all there is to it, guys. It's fairly simple, like I said. Make sure the power's off. Put your hands on every wire nut, every connection you can find in there. Make sure it's tight. A tight connection is a happy connection. And we're going to go back inside and wrap the video up after I put the top on. Okay, guys, so really that's all there is to it on the electrical, on the air conditioning. There's not a whole lot to it. They're very simple systems. You know, there's really only two motors in there. You've got your compressor motor and your fan motor. I can't remember if I said it before, but the rooftops on the Sonics, they're not walkable. So I always try and stick to the edge because there is a support beam that goes down both sides to secure the roof. It's what the roof is screwed to. And I'll try and keep to where there's a cross brace. I know that there is one right behind the air conditioner from running the thermostat wire, so I'll kind of stick to those two spots so I don't fall through the roof, because then we'd have a whole different video on how to fix a hole in your roof, which I just don't want to do that video if I don't have to. But if you are not comfortable with doing this, if you are not qualified, and honestly, I don't mean this as a slight against anybody out there. Have that honest conversation with yourself. If you're not qualified to be messing around with the stuff when the power is on and doing those checks, don't do them. I really can't stress that enough. Every single HVAC tech out there, every single installer, every single electrician all has a story of where they forgot to turn the power off and something bad happened. And for 99% of us, the worst thing that happened was the breaker tripped, we got scared, and we learned a lesson from it. We learned to slow down and take our time and respect electricity. There's always the unfortunate 1% that gets hurt and can't return to the field because of a life-changing injury, or, even worse, if they end up dead. You don't want to end up that way. If you're wondering why I'm holding these needle nose pliers right here, it's because these needle nose pliers have a story. If you look right there, there's a melted spot on those. Can you guys see that? I'll zoom in so you guys can see it. Let my camera woman here give me a thumbs up when she can see it. Okay. That is from when I was checking a capacitor one time and I forgot to turn the power off because I was in a rush. And again, for me, I was lucky. I learned to slow down. I learned to make sure that the power's off. Make sure I check with my meter because things get bypassed, stuff like that. The trailer's relatively safe. You can unplug it and there's no power in it anymore. provided you're not working on something on the 12-volt side, but that's a different story for a different day. So seriously, have that conversation with yourself, you know, and if you are not 110% sure that you're qualified to do this, I would take no offense to you guys not doing it and taking it to a professional. That's the God's honest truth. You know, I know Gil over at HVAC Uncensored, he has a podcast, if you guys don't know. He says at the end of every single one of his podcasts, make it home the same way that you left. And that's something that you really got to take to heart when you're working around electricity. You know, make it back into your house when you're done working on the AC or the electrical on the camper the same way that you walked out of it. You don't want to have a life-changing injury. You don't want to end up dead. So, that's enough of that. As always, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe. If you want to see more of these electrical videos, let us know in the comments that you want to see more electrical videos. I do have a video that explains some of the basics of electricity. I'll drop that in the comments, in the description. I'll also drop in the description a couple of the air conditioning videos that I have, some of the other maintenance checks. So look for those there. And as always, guys, seriously, stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys on the next video.